Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Oh, how's it going, everybody? Ben O'Brien, The Hunting Collective, episode 78. We're back again. It's elk season. We're going to do something a little bit different for this show rather than the format we've been going with lately. I just feel like we haven't told enough hunting stories lately. We got you hyped last week for elk season. We talked to a bunch of cool hunters from around, but now we've pulled in 3 of our favorite meat eater hunting fools. And we got Ryan Cal Callahan, we got Joe Farinato, Meat Eater's community manager, and Sam Lundgren, Meat Eater's fishing editor, but also an elk killer, as you'll hear pretty soon. We want to just get together, tell the stories from opening day, tell our elk stories up to this point in the season, compare and contrast, see what we can learn, see what we can find out. It was great, man. A lot of good stories, a lot of good chatter. So hopefully you enjoy it. But before we get to that, we're going to go talk about First Light. First Light, you're going to hear from Ryan Cal Callahan here in a minute. But if you go to First Light's website, you're going to see his early season antelope and elk kit, which I think is a good run for anyone looking to put together your kit. And we've talked about this a lot of times on the podcast, but for First Light, the men's wick hoodie is an essential for me and an essential for Cal. He's using the Airwool neck gaiter, the men's wick long boxer brief, the Obsidian merino pants. Cal loves the Obsidian. He's got the men's Brooks down sweater, and then the Vapor Stormlight ultralight rain jacket. And that's what Cal's wearing. That's pretty similar to my kit. But if you go to firstlight.com, you can check out what old Cal's up to, what he's wearing out in the field. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. Without further ado, episode 78.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the...
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hunting Collective. It's September 10th, right, Sam?
Correct.
Thank you. We're in elk season. It was opening weekend in Montana.
Latest opening weekend ever.
It's good, though.
It has turned out to be very good.
It's a fantastic thing. I'm here with a Bassel of beauties. Yeah? Cal's looking at me like...
Are you going to keep going with the bees?
Yeah, a Bassel of busty beauties here. Joe Farinato. Say hey, Joe.
Hey, everybody.
You're the community manager for Meat Eater, are you not?
I am.
You read all the emails?
Yep. Too many.
Yeah. So be nice to Joe.
Yeah.
You ever see him on the street because he's got his finger on the pulse.
I do.
And he's got the coolest beat of any journalist I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Tell him what your beat is.
Tell him your beat at themeateater.com.
I'm the bad shit editor. I get to report on all the bad stuff that happens out there. Bear attacks, wolf attacks, lion attacks, people getting lost.
People getting mauled.
Yeah.
People falling off cliffs.
Yeah. All
Have
that
we,
good stuff.
So send him that stuff and not your chafing photos, because that was a bad period in Joe's life.
Yeah, Joe's
That was the worst period in my life.
Yeah.
I was going into a very dark place.
Joe is the voice. He's really the voice of the email because he reads everything. So before you hit send, just know that it's going to affect Joe's life.
Yeah.
tremendously.
And
Yeah.
please don't send me pictures of your chafing.
Yeah, I mean, traumatic content and emails just to strangers, just
Yeah, it's
censor
not gonna.
that shit.
Oh, hey Phil, I'm back on the White Claw meme train. By the way, I'm back into it.
You love it again.
I'm back into it.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, I was off of it.
Yeah. So was there a specific meme that brought you back?
No, but there was a shortage of White Claws in America
Yeah, I heard
recently,
that. Uh-huh.
and I got so many memes about it. It inspired me to come back onto the White Claw train.
Yep.
White Claw meme train.
That
just as
stuff
an
is
aside.
everywhere. My long road trip with our shooter, Lauren Moulton, who's been working for Big Sky Brewing here in Montana for like 15 years, gave me the entire history of the hard seltzer. And
Ooh.
Oh, Big Sky started doing their own.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, and it's been real good for them. And I just had no clue.
Was it
I've got a story about
It's
White
everywhere.
Claw that we'll get into later when we start talking
Oh.
stories.
Really?
Yes.
During your elk hunt?
Yes.
Wow, God, you did really well. I mean, I'm like, I told Sam before he went elk hunting this week, I'm like, we're gonna do a podcast and recap our opening weekends, and he just hit it out of the park as far as stories go. I feel.
Ben says jump, I say how high.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. We got Cal here. Hey, Cal.
Hey, man.
Hey, I just saw a photo of you wearing. Can we post this of you wearing jean shorts, jorts, as
Daisy
they would be
Dukes.
called.
Yeah,
Daisy Dukes,
definitely Daisy
with
Dukes.
like a frayed bottom.
They're not Daisy Dukes if guys wear them. I mean, those
No,
are just.
they definitely are.
Dude Dukes. What are they called?
Well, it was a good.
David Dukes.
Oh,
no,
there it is.
And the pot. I'm normally the one to say offensive shit like that. Thanks for lowering the.
No, we can't post that. I was just like a raft guide reunion thing, and it was kind of a good thing. Like, oh wow, I can still fit in my same former jeans.
You
From-
wore those jeans for a period of time? Because they're like, let me describe them. They're cut off to about mid thigh.
That'd be generous.
That'd be
I
generous.
feel like it's a
Definitely
ways north.
upper
It's a
of
ways
mid-thigh.
north. Yeah, it's in the upper third of your thigh.
It's
And there's
approaching
like-
booty shorts status.
And there's
Oh,
like
yeah.
a frayed bottom.
Well, yeah. So they were, just my kick around working guy Wranglers until they deteriorated, and then we had a big 70s theme party.
Oh,
So I hacked them off for that occasion.
yeah. It's important to know the origin story of a photo like that. I just feel like
Yeah, and
People need to
that 70s theme party was probably like 12 years ago, and I can still fit into the jean shorts, which I feel real good about.
yeah, that's a good weekend.
Yeah.
You go to.
However, the gut has gotten bigger, so apparently that
I did
just
notice.
doesn't.
I did
yeah.
notice a little bit. Yeah, a little bit of something going on there.
Yeah.
But I was, I'm not going to say I wasn't excited by that photo for a lot of
Well, I
reasons.
appreciate that.
So you're never going to see it out there in listener land. Never
No.
going to see it. But just imagine what it would look like.
I don't think
Cow.
you can help but imagine it.
Yeah, imagine. Let's just take a moment. Well, we're here today to do a few things. We're going to go through our stories of our opening elk, and Cal was actually on private land when he killed his bull, but that doesn't matter. It wasn't opening day. Was it opening day in Oregon when you hunted?
Well, I started the hunt on opening day.
Perfect. That
Yeah.
works for this. We're going to go through it kind of in a different way. We're going to kind of go through each stage of how you get to a hunt, how you decide the elk you're going to go after, how you make a game plan, and then the story of how it actually all went down. We're going to do that in some parts. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how you pick a spot and how you get into a situation where you're going to then find a bull, make a game plan, kill that elk. And so, Joe, you have a pretty interesting spot that you found. We're not going to give away anything about your spots.
Well, I didn't
so
find
don't be
it, so
nervous.
I can't. I
Well,
can't give it away.
You're going to tell us, just tell us how you found this spot, what you were looking for. Feel free to reference Onyx Maps because that's how we all find our spots these days, hopefully.
Yeah. So my buddy actually found this spot, and basically, from what I gather, the only reason I got to go there was because there are so many grizzly bears in that area. He didn't want to go alone.
Hmm.
So he's like, let's bring Joe as bait so he gets eaten by the bears.
How many grizzly bears had you seen during scouting?
During scouting, we didn't see any. We saw a lot of sign, but during scouting, we didn't see any. And then when he went up there Friday, the night before opening day, he counted 4 in one basin.
4.
Yeah.
That's the same basin the elk that you were chasing were in.
Yep. Yeah, the basin that we had to go into to find the elk.
And did you see any while you were hunting?
No. Saw one massive black bear while we were hunting.
No grizzlies.
But no grizzlies. Saw a lot of sign, though. But from what we gather, they kind of moved up over into the other basins.
So just to kind of describe the spot you were in general terms, what's it look like?
Very high mountains, kind of cliffed out with these really cool lower basins that are just filled with springs and wallows and lots of trees. Just looks elky.
Elky. Public land?
Yep.
How far a hike in?
A few miles into the spot where we set up camp, and then we decided to dump off the backside of the mountain and go a couple miles further from the truck.
So give us a brief why you pick a spot like that, other than you saw a bull in there. Like if it was elkless, why would you guess or posit that there's an elk in that spot?
Well, I would look at that spot and say it kind of had everything they need: really good bedding areas, really good water, feed, the wallows and everything. The springs up there. It's that kind of awesome high mountain area. They're very secluded. Nothing really going to be up there to get them. Not a lot of people bugging them.
Except for grizzly bears.
Yeah, but the weird thing was he saw 2 cow elk just hanging out right next to the grizzly bears.
Did that give you pause, Cal? In a spot like that, you're 2 miles in, you got 4 grizzlies rolling around, you got your bear defense lined out, obviously. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you do, I mean, you should be aware if there's grizzly bears in an area and certainly pre-plan for that. If you haven't pre-planned for that, I wouldn't go messing around at this point in my life with trying to kill something that's going to take, a lot of time to pack out.
yeah, let's say you got, you're a local hunter or you've scouted a general, say, a chunk of national forest pretty good. You got your A spot, your B spot, and your C spot. And, as Joe did the morning before you go, you spot 4 grizzlies, in your A spot. Are you moving to B? You're just like, I'm going to back out and move to my B spot.
Yeah. I mean, best answer is yes. I mean, the odds are, and from what it sounds like, a spot like that, if you're not seeing bears, they're probably there anyway. But, at least when they write your epitaph, you can be like, he did his best to avoid the bears.
He backed out when it was prudent.
But
yeah.
the first line of that epitaph is pretty damn cool. So maybe that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah,
That's true.
I think so.
But you stayed in. You guys went in. Your buddy Ty was in there
Yeah,
and
he was
filmed
up
those
there.
grizzlies on Friday.
Yep, sending me pictures.
Yep. And then while we were eating lunch, he was sending you all kind of videos of grizzly bears.
Yeah,
And
he's like, bring an assault rifle. We have company.
You were pretty nervous,
Yeah, I didn't want to walk in the dark by myself.
but yet you did.
I did.
Yeah,
Got
you
over
did.
my fear.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. Sam, let's tell us about your spot, like how you ran into it. I think we're all in a spot where like in a position where we have our buddies and other people giving us intel and all those types of things. But
Yeah, I'd start off with saying that the secret to finding good hunting spots is to find good hunting buddies.
Yeah.
Especially since I just moved here and didn't really get to scout too much this summer. But my good buddy found this spot antelope hunting last year, and then was like, "Oh hell, there's a lot of elk down in here." Just at various times of the early morning and very late evening, they pass through a piece of public land, going from some farmers' fields up into some highland where they like to bed. So they go from private to private, but they pass through a couple square mile chunks of public ground in there right at first light. And we scouted it out a couple times, got up on this high hill where we could stay out of their way. It's very circuitous and difficult to get in there because you have to walk a patchwork of public ground to get way back in, even though you're not terribly far from a road. We had a really good scouting session last week, and then got down into the territory after the elk had left and felt it out a little bit, and felt really confident in going in opening morning.
And this is a spot where, like, void of elk. Has your buddy not seen elk there? It's a spot you picking out on the map. Like, I'm gonna dump in there.
Never.
Yeah, never.
No, it's not. And to be completely honest, it's not really what it's not really the kind of elk hunting that I dream of and aspire to. I really like climbing mountains and being up in the stuff Joe's talking about and screaming at them in heavy timber and whatnot. But we felt like, it's hard for a large group of elk to exist in Montana without people knowing about it. And we felt like it was probably their patterns would probably change pretty rapidly after they got pressured with archery season opening. So it felt like an opening day move that we might have felt it out a little bit better than other people, and we could get in there and try to capitalize on this good intel that we'd acquired. And
Yeah,
seems like it worked out.
Find your spot. Cal, your situation is a little bit different than just running out on opening day, but I still think super valuable for this conversation. Tell us about where you were and what you were doing.
I got a bull elk tag on a big chunk of private ground that is owned by the Nature Conservancy in Eastern Oregon, out of Joseph. It's called the Zumwalt Prairie Preserve. A lot of people get hunted every year, but there's very limited elk tags, bull elk tags, very limited buck mule deer tags. And I had one of, I believe, 4 bull elk tags.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so crazy opportunity. There were other hunters out there hunting cows, but I was the only person out there with a bull tag. And this time of year, so their season started, or I should say my season started August 24th.
Yeah.
And predominantly you could say all the bulls were in one spot and all the cows were in the other spot. Like they weren't really mixing it up. And we actually saw like the first couple bulls run in and start hanging out with the cows.
Did you spend a lot of time looking at Onyx maps, looking at the property, talking to the guides, or talking to whoever, landowners, trying to pick out, here's the basin I'm going to hit, here's the prairie where they're going to come up? Did you do that, or was it just get there and see what it's like?
It was more get there and see, because this is like I want to say, other than like some depredation cows, like this is the only time I've ever hunted elk on private land, and super cool opportunity, and one of the preserve. So when they have folks with bull or buck tags, their program on this chunk of private ground is you got to go out with one of the preserve stewards. And the preserve steward that I was hunting with, this guy Chad Dotson, he also had a buck mule deer tag for the same area, not on the same property, but same area. And he was like, listen, we're going to find elk. He's like, if you don't want something pinned down, it's like, I'm going to go hunt this mule deer tag until you show up. And I was like, perfect. Because, I just already felt slightly sheepish of how freaking awesome of an opportunity this was. And I just wanted to avoid any sort of hand-holding situation.
Yeah.
And there was no trick to finding elk. Like, showed up super late, as per usual, opening day, dropped our gear, assembled our gear, headed up onto one of the plateaus to just kind of get a lay of the land and look over, and there's 7 bulls walking out in front of us, and then we went a little bit further, and there's 6 more bulls coming up out of the timber. And so that set things off, as I wasn't feeling real pressured as to if we were going to find elk.
Yeah. That's why I like going through it this way, because then you start to see like everybody, you guys, Cal, and the end of these stories, you guys both killed elk. Cal and Sam killed elk. Joe and I did not. But like you get into how exactly did this all start? How did you get the opportunity to do this? How do you think about making a game plan of where to go? And there's so many stories, so many stories where it comes from a buddy, or it comes from somebody that has already done the work,
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you can just get a confident, this is the general zone, that saves such an insane amount of time. I mean, you don't even need like the how to access it, whatever. But if it's like, listen, there are a lot of elk right here.
Yeah. Well, that's the hardest. I think the hardest part about elk scouting, especially in Montana, being that most of the state is over the counter for elk. It's trying to pick a damn mountain range to go to. It's like, well, I heard this one's good, and I heard this one's good, and I heard this one's good, and it's so easy to. It's so much harder to focus down the picture. And then once you pick that mountain range, and it's like, well, hell, there's a lot of really cool looking high mountain basins that have ponds that are like possibly wallows around them. And I mean, I was doing that all last week looking for a plan B spot because what we were going to hunt was going to be, we had one chance. We had one chance opening morning, and we were going to know in the first hour if we blew it. And so we were looking for high mountain spots to go hike into. And I always struggle flying around, like, to narrow my point of view down to a particular basin that I'm going to hike into because there's so much good looking country.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I
But
struggle
at
with
the
the
same
thing.
time, I almost hit a bull with my truck Thursday night driving to this wedding.
Were you wearing? You weren't wearing
On
the
X.
shorts.
It's like, okay, this would be a good spot. I'm like, I'm not above hopping off the highway.
Well, and that's exactly it. You take every little cue that's available to you, whether it's somebody saying something at a bar or, I started looking at a mountain range because my barber the other week mentioned that there's elk up in there, and I started checking it out afterwards. Or, you're driving along and you're like, wow, that looks like a cool place to go elk hunting. I sure like that, the dispersal of trees and rocks and stuff up there. And I'll just like you're saying, pull off the side of the road, pull up Onyx and mark something.
That's what happened to me. I had a couple places picked out that were further away from home, and I got a pregnant wife and a son there, and I'm like, man, I got to find, especially for these first couple weekends where there's not really firing up, I got to find a spot where I can go in the morning or in the evening and at least be back home at a decent hour. Like, I gotta do that. I gotta have that option. So why not take at least the first weekend to find that? It's a look around. If it isn't there, it's not there, but I'll look.
And I think that speaks to a big part of this is that it helps to know what experience you're seeking, because I do go out and look at trying to find after work spots and easy accessible things when I don't have a lot of time. But at the same time, probably the greatest hunting spot I've ever discovered on my own, where I've killed several nice mule deer and played with a lot of really nice elk. I found that by deliberately looking for a place that I was going to go for 10 days by myself. And I looked for the place that would be hardest to get to by road, and then had the area that was farthest from roads and motorized trails within that whole area. So I deliberately found like the worst spot to get to. This takes forever from where I used to live in Missoula. This place is in Montana. It takes me 12 hours from where I used to live in Missoula to get there. But it's totally worth it. But you have to have like a full week to get in there. So it's all about like identifying the experience you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And my story was, I'm okay, there's my house. I'm looking at within a half an hour radius. So now I'm going to look at what are my options. I pick one range. I'm like, that's going to be it. That's really the only place I could go. I could maybe hit this spot. I start looking. I'm like, it's not worth my time to go over there. I might drive over there in the afternoon and just run the road really quick and see what I can see, but it's not worth hiking in over a day or even scouting, really. I got one real option. All I did was look at what is, and I can't get too far up in there. I'm gonna be too far to get home at a decent hour. So I'm like, okay, what's the first road that accesses this national forest that gets me to a place where, easily accessible? And at this point, it's like it borders a bunch of ag that I can run up through, check these drainages to know where these elk are coming out. Because we had seen, just like you were saying, from a road, you see, a herd of cows and a bull in August. You're like, okay, like that's a starting point. So we found this private road. We found where we saw some elk that were they were just in a pocket of landlocked state ground. And then we rode up into the national forest and picked the drainages that we thought they were going to funnel back up into once they're off the ag, and set up in the first closest one we could get to for Saturday morning. And and it was pretty much on from there. So we were going in there blind. We had been to that spot, but never been in on that trail. So I mean, you can either have scouted it every day, like Sam did, like Joe did, or I was fairly blind. You were fairly blind, Cal, in different situations. And so there's a lot of ways to get to the point where you're like, now I got to find an elk. And so, had you ever seen the bull that you killed before you killed it?
I hadn't seen him up close, but we saw that whole herd, so I was looking at him from a ways off. I didn't like necessarily, mark him or anything. With the main herd, there was one big herd bull, and then this one, and then a couple little raghorns and spikes. But then there's a big bachelor group that was kind of shadowing them. But I know I didn't like identify this bull. It was probably less than 60 seconds between when I saw him first and when I was putting an arrow through him. It all happened very fast. It was very crazy, chaotic, sprinting situation.
Joe, you've we don't even want to tell people about this giant elk that you spotted.
Sounds like everybody knows about it.
Yeah, everybody in the office knows about it.
Sounds like everyone in Bozeman knows about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or no, that's yours, Ben.
No, that's mine. Yeah.
But no, we saw a bull and we were up scouting it and was like, that's the bull that we want. So we took that as we're going to go up there regardless of the situation, because weather wasn't supposed to be great and everything, and high mountains. And we saw him and he got the drive going. So we ran up there and unfortunately couldn't locate him this weekend.
Really?
We thought we found the herd that he was with, but we got close. Ty had him at about 70 yards, that herd. And he said the bull that was with him was different. And looking at him from a distance, we were all like, yep, that's it. But we had a lot of fog rolling in, and it was kind of hard to identify. But unfortunately, we couldn't find him. We heard a couple bugles that sounded like his, but other than that,
because the video you showed me, like he was rolling on this like ridge top, just letting
gorgeous.
it go.
Yeah,
I mean, a beautiful.
Yeah,
there's something about hunting seasons opening that make big, magnificent bulls that you've scouted just disappear.
They jump right into a hole in the ground somewhere and don't come out.
That's happened to me a number of times where I've found huge bulls in the summer, and then I come back in hunting season and all their satellites are still kicking around, but they've just vanished.
Yeah.
Oh, you hear the whitetail hunter like, old stickers.
Yeah, the swamp buck.
The swamp buck. Seen it for 4 years.
Yeah,
and then next year he was gone, and then 2 years later he's back, or his sheds or his dead head is found or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've established that Joe and I still have tags in our pockets. Cal, have you told this story anywhere? Your elk story from Oregon?
No. I mean, I got a bull. It was, big chunk of private ground, so you get a lot of chips stacked in your favor, but it's still elk hunting and archery elk hunting and
traditional archery elk hunting.
Yeah, you take it to another level.
I don't believe in that at all.
You don't think it's harder?
If it weren't an effective weapon, I wouldn't be hunting with it. And I hate this culture of like, yeah, but let me define the fact that this is what I'm doing.
I respect
and it's
that.
Like, well, if it was.
Well, this is like you've kind of.
A lot of people like to talk about the struggle stick.
Yeah, which I think is just
you've kind of got
asinine.
You've kind of there is like we've got the nomenclature of like you can't just be like I killed an elk. You're like I've killed a public land tradbow elk. You have to kind of line up exactly.
Yeah,
what the
get your
details
adjectives in order.
So your adjectives are like
DIY,
private land, tradbow. It doesn't even make any sense.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like you were trying to make it hard and easy at the same time.
Yeah. And so, again, like tons stacked in the favor. There wasn't like this, oh my God, I hope the elk are still there. There wasn't any of this, any of like the normal stuff of like somebody else is going to get in here. I got to make this happen. But as like so many times with new spots, the first night was like arguably one of the best nights and had this, gorgeous big bull at about 30 yards and was 0.2 seconds from letting an arrow fly. And, and then he saw something he didn't like, and that was that, and ended up just kind of like laying on this mountain until it was dark enough to try to get out of there without spooking everything. But like big bachelor groups of bulls, 0 cows. And that was like the difficult part, where there were just so many elk. You were never dealing with a single bull situation. And tried waiting them out as they were moving up to water and better feed in the evenings. And, had like some measures of success doing that, like the pick out where you think they're going to go and cut them off. And then, just tried stalking in on a few and had, again, some measures of success and failure on that as well. And then, really it was like kind of a combination of both at the end that ended up shooting a bull. So like snuck in.
Yeah, you got to tell
calling.
Tell the story. You're trying to film this, and this is going to it'll be seen on a future project with cows we can review.
Yeah. And gotten this great conversation, and we're talking with multiple bulls. And then, there's one bull that is just noticeably bigger by sound, and it's just like super growly. And ended up dropping in and getting on top of him. And I bet he had moved 10 yards from his bed. And I think that was really the thing. I was able to, super dry, crunchy ground, walk in on top of him, and would bugle, and he'd respond. And I had watched him bugle 3 times broadside at 35 yards with just not a great shot. And then walked in to about 24 yards on him, just calling. And every time he'd drop his head, I'd crunch, crunch, crunch and call. And he just was an old bull and didn't care about, he knew the cow noises I was making weren't like serious love making noises, because it just wasn't that time of year yet. And he was a old, big bodied dude, and knew that the bugles it wasn't anything that was going to bother him either.
Didn't care.
Right. So I just basically, slowly got to walk in on him and cut him off a little bit as he was feeding. Through like 20 minutes of moving from 35 to 24 yards. And
are you crawling at this point? Or are you
no, standing?
Really?
Yeah,
just crouched walking.
He makes so much noise crawling too, and that's like unnatural noise also. But like a couple of crunch, crunch, crunch footsteps. Every critter does that.
Could he have looked over and saw you, or is he like down a ridge where he couldn't have?
He looked right at me a couple of times, yeah. And I made biggest thing is like I never stand behind anything, because that's a great way to observe wildlife, not kill it. Mm-hmm. So I just make sure I have a good backdrop, obviously whenever possible, but, and I have this big cliff wall behind me, super steep country.
So you're not skyline, you're not sticking out, poking out.
Yeah.
But that's a good point to make for people to remember. Like hiding behind something isn't always the best way to go.
Yeah. If they can see your silhouette, you're hosed. But if you're crouched and have something behind you, you can look at them all day. We had some cows walk by us at like 15 yards, just crouched out in open grass.
Yeah. My story is very similar. Just like call the bull in, he sees you the first time, rolls away, call again, then just stand up and kind of move with him. And they're intrigued enough they're going to need a good reason to bolt out of it.
And frankly, elk have terrible eyesight relative to whitetails and mule deer. I mean, I've had big muleys pick me off at like 1,000 yards. Trying like, we can totally dip through this saddle and get up and around, come down on that muley's bed. There's no way he's going to see us.
Every whitetail hunter that's listening to this knows that when that doe steps out in the field, like the fawns come out first, and then the doe steps out like 200 yards away and looks right up at your tree stand. You're like, bullshit, there's no way. I'm not moving at all. But that's
like, she can't see me. I swear she can't.
Yeah.
She can't.
Continue, Cal, with your riveting tale.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
I mean, so that was it. I had a perfect broadside shot at 24 yards, and
I thought there was more.
yeah, I'll let an arrow fly, and sounded like a good hit. The bull reacted like it was shot in the heart. Like the whole body posture changed. I just had that look of like crashing the whole time, and probably ran 120 yards maybe, and then saw it hit the brakes and make a hard 90-degree turn on what turned out to be a game trail down there, and what turned out to be a game trail directly above a cliff. And it made a couple of steps, and then I heard a major crash. And then like 3 seconds later, I heard another big crash. And then like 5 seconds later, another heard, and I was like, oh, sounds like he fell all the way to the bottom. Ha, ha, ha. But he did. He went 600 vertical feet, we think, to the bottom and off several cliffs. And it was terrible.
Did you lose much meat out of that?
Surprisingly, there was a lot of trauma. But surprisingly, it wasn't it wasn't as bad as the initial impression was bad. But wasn't, I mean, honestly, like you open that thing up and it's like, man, just walk away. Like I even made the comment, I was like, man, I wonder if Oregon Fish and Game would give me a cow tag, because this is like the most beat up thing I've seen. But I think all the fat that this guy had on him, just all the fat was literally obliterated. It's nothing that I've ever seen. If I could post these pictures, I would, because it is just like nothing I have ever seen. And I've recovered a lot of animals. And but like the fat matter was like busted down into like particulate size and distributed everywhere.
Kind of just absorbed the blow.
Do you feel like he free fell? He had to have? Or did he slide the entire time?
Yeah, there's at least 2 spots where that whole, and this is a huge bodied bull. That whole thing was airborne for, was at least 6 to 8 feet off the ground 2 or 3 times. So at least, at a minimum, 2 times.
600 feet, for those who can't picture it, don't spend a lot of time in mountains. That's a effing long way. That's a long way.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but
600, 600 feet doesn't sound.
It's a long.
So if I said hike 600 feet vert,
that's going to be half a mile.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean it's
side of a steep hill like that.
That is a long drop,
and it went so fast. And these are all like active rock slides, like big Hell's Canyon type country. Went so fast that, like there was like no blood. There was, it was just like active rock fall. And so, you kind of start second guessing yourself, because there's a lot of places where that bull should have hung up. And I'm always very hesitant to drop elevation unless I know going down is the right thing. So I was going slow and and doing a lot of looking, and it was actually the chunks of horn, like the pure white core of the horn, that it was like the bull had to come through here because this is where his antlers exploded on the rock.
Ugh.
And so you're like picking up little chunks of antler on your way down the mountain. But you went through that stuff. Again, at times, literally not touching the ground. So fast that there was, I was like, yes, he's got to be down this fall line, judging from what I've seen. But, it's pitch black, and you always second guess yourself.
Well, that's what it is.
stuff.
You shot the bull right around dusk, right?
Yeah. Yep. Which I hate doing. And I've passed up shots just purely off of that in the past because I just don't like dealing with it. But I knew that there was an old 2-track road in the bottom of this thing.
I was going to say, how the hell do you get out of there?
Right. So I knew that. And it was a great shot. And, I had, in order to come back and hunt, would have been another 20 hours of driving around trip. And it's the last day, and there's a bull 24 yards from you, so, or last day of that hunt. So, yeah. And it was just amazing. So it was an hour and a half of picking my way down that slope
In the dark.
Yeah, and to ultimately find it about 150 yards from the bottom of the canyon there, and probably another 100 yards of relatively flat creek crossing to get him to the road. So
what percentage of his antlers were gone? I mean, I've seen kind of a couple of shots of him, but you think like half of his rack was gone?
I think he was 5x6 or something in there. And this is just like an old bull that is, heavy bull, but he is now a 3x4 with so he's broken right above his brow tines on the one side, and then he's broken. He's broken above his third on the other side, but there's part of that split there, so you could still count that as number 4 if you wanted to. And yeah, man, it's just a good, real good memory maker for sure.
Hell yeah.
So,
There's a lot of people that talk about the struggles thick or not. There's a lot of people that hunt for a long time with trad equipment and don't kill any bull, let alone
practice, man.
practice.
Yeah.
Have you eaten any of it yet?
Ate the heart. Had some heart sandwiches, real good.
Oh, this look good.
I ate heart last night.
Caprese.
Love them.
That's what you got to do. Is that the thing you got to do the night you kill a bull? I'm not a big fan of like just eating the straps or something that night.
I typically will do it that night or the next night. With that night we did a tenderloin just because it was easier because filleting the heart and getting it nice unless you're just going to core it. I like to take my time, get my cutting station all set up, and do that. So I never freeze hearts. I always have them early. But yeah, tenderloin's typically my go-to for that night, just because the tenderloins dry out so damn fast. Like if you're trying to age the rest of your meat, tenderloins can just. It's a bit more for deer than elk, but they'll just shrivel up into
Nothing.
raisins. Yeah.
Ty and I had
Trim
that
it.
conversation. It's like very rarely do the tenderloins make it from the field to the freezer. It's just like field and then into the stomach.
Yes.
And then the heart caprese sandwich, is that what it was? Caprese sandwich that you did? That looked damn good.
I think I might do that tonight. I kept one of the lobes of the heart.
I
to
would just
cook.
strongly suggest you do. And I don't find anything wrong with freezing them because there's so much material that you trim off a heart
Very true.
anyway, So,
Yeah.
so I've had good
It's
luck
not that
with
I have
it.
a problem freezing it. It's just that's like my favorite thing to eat.
Well, plus get started, right? It's
Yeah.
like I get in meat hoarding situations all the time. But I think best rule of thumb, if you can, it's like if you can let all that meat rest for 24 hours, that's going to be the best move.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, tenderloins, there's no reason tenderloins need to make it off the mountain if you're in that situation. If you're truly parting an elk all the way out, yeah, there's a decent amount of trimming on a tenderloin anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the difference between an elk and a deer, right? An elk, there's enough on a tenderloin that could make a meal.
Oh, I fed 4 people on that
Yeah.
tenderloin.
Yeah.
With the backstrap's a whole different story, but the tenderloin for sure. We'll get to that. I want to get to like what we're gonna do with these dead elk, the 2 that we got in the room. Sam, we gotta hear your tale.
Yeah,
You've set us up. You're in a very hard to get to spot with a shit ton of elk coming through.
Yeah. Yeah, not terribly hard to get to, just hard to figure out, hard to realize that there's elk in there. And I was surprised. I thought it was going to be there was going to be an overrun with hunters, and we saw a couple other guys who were just doing it wrong, and then they got out of there. I don't think they saw us. I don't think they knew that we had a bull down or anything. But so yeah, we got a good feel for it last week. And made this whole game plan. I was going to be on the first ridge after they come out of this little creek. Jake was going to go down into the willows and try to be like in the creek bottom where they come into after leaving the ag fields. But we were hiking in and just decided to completely throw the plan out of the window. The wind was doing the wrong thing. It was blowing kind of towards them instead of away like we thought it was going to. And we could hear elk talking in the creek in the dark. Let me scroll this back a little ways because I prefaced this.
Oh yes.
we
Don't
left,
leave your-
we left
yeah.
we both left our houses at 1:30 in the morning on Saturday to be able to do this right, because we knew how, we timed everything. We knew the drive time, we knew the hike time.
How much sleep you working on?
About 2 hours.
I've been there.
Yeah, because I tried to go to bed with like 3 hours and I couldn't fall asleep, and went and had a Benadryl just to try to get myself to go down for a minute. But yeah, so I was very woozy, didn't have time to make coffee. The first alarm went off and I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'm getting up and everything. Look at me get up, and having like a dream of getting up and getting packed and stuff. And then the second alarm went off and I was like, oh shit, I'm supposed to meet Jake in 15 minutes. And luckily I had packed the car the night before, but didn't have time to have coffee. Just grabbed some stuff out of the fridge and wolfed it down. Well, just brought it to me with the car, or brought it to the car and ate it on the way. But yeah, so we ran out there. We got to the spot at like 3 a.m. and we were a little early, and there was a White Claw in my back seat.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we decided to split it.
What flavor?
Black cherry.
You'll never forget that day.
I never forget
Every
it.
time you drink,
And-
time you drink a black cherry White Claw, you'll taste the rutting bull. He probably wasn't rutting.
And Jake said something very prescient. He's like, man, if we kill a bull this morning, we're going to have a White Claw before we go hunting, like every time. It's going to be a lucky thing. And then
You're like, Sam,
No, you have to.
Sam got diabetes.
I mean, sitting there like in the truck, like we're just like, we wanted to be the first truck there. So if somebody showed up, we could kind of be walking if we saw headlights, but we didn't really need to be in there that early. But sitting there in the truck, I'm like, this is the most degenerate thing I've ever done in my life.
Let me just say, let's cover that for a second. What do you guys all think about? Because I had this, my story has this kind of on the tail end, but how you, like, if you have a parking spot or a pull-in spot, and you're either the first truck, second truck, or whatever, how do you handle these situations?
Oh man, there's a lot of etiquette tied up in that question. It kind of depends on the size of the area. Like a lot of times, get to some spot, and if there's a truck there, I'm like, oh well, hell, I'll go into the next spot, just because.
Yeah, I guess the better question is
archery hunting. Just one person can disturb a lot of country.
Well, even for you, Cal, like what's the scenario where you will see a truck and still go in? Even if it's like a single, we had a situation where it's like a single trailhead, one truck can get into the gated portion of it. Like you could pull into the gate and walk the rest of the trail. So if there's one truck, it's pretty clear. Like there's nowhere else to be. I saw this weekend a couple of times where guys would just drive to the top of the canyon, to the top of the drainage, and then probably drop in the top knowing that there's somebody in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, what's the spatial awareness that you have to have in those situations?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I know a lot of spots well enough to where I'll walk up with people with my headlamp off and watch their headlamp decisions in the middle of the night and be
Mhm.
like,
Cal's watching. You.
okay, they're going this way, then
They're
I'm going to
probably
go this way. And
Push animals that way.
and I know I'll never see them.
Yeah.
Or the odds are I will never see them.
If you're walking in the dark in the woods, Cal could be watching you.
Oh, absolutely.
No matter.
I have
where
this
you-
phobia,
Cal's always watching you.
Yeah.
major phobia of running out of batteries. And so I consequently basically never use anything battery powered. Like I've walked so many miles
That makes sense.
in the moonlight.
Me too, man.
And just been like,
I do that
Yeah.
very deliberately, and a couple times I've kind of snapped at friends like, dude, don't turn on your headlamp. You're gonna ruin my
It
night
ruins
vision.
your night vision.
It does.
Like the
yes.
dude with the super bright headlamp is the dick of.
And they always
Of
have
the
to turn
hike
it
in.
on right in your face.
Yeah.
Just right. in your
And
face.
avoiding your phone screen is important there too.
That's
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I've read that it takes 45 minutes for your eyes to fully adjust
Mm.
Really?
to low light
wow.
situations. So you want to keep them developing.
but yeah, you absolutely have to develop this attitude. And it's taken me a long time, but I absolutely have it now to where I absolutely know that somebody's going to be at the spot I picked. So if I get up there and there's a truck there, then I just go pick another spot.
B spot.
But if there's not a truck there, I'm like, okay, they probably dropped in here from a different direction, but at least there's nobody parked here.
at least I walk in this way.
Yeah, if you're going to hunt public lands, you've got to have a pretty thick skin about it because it's everybody's. Everybody has every right to be out there too, and
Yeah.
you're just gonna see people, and you just have to.
Yeah,
adapt
you
to
have to thicken your skin over
And like
that.
your
You can't. It's,
situation, Sam, like it doesn't matter if somebody's parked where you guys are parked,
Nope.
right? Because there's that checkerboard of the public-private interface. Like there's so many means of access that you just can't account for.
Nope.
So you gotta just be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna dedicate a morning to this and see if we can get lucky.
That's how I built my mindset for this. I was like, I am assuming this is going to be overrun with hunters, and they're going to blow out all of the elk before dawn, and then we're going to go hike in somewhere else, and that's okay.
that's where
Yep.
we were
Yep.
talking about that on my hunt. I was like, we're going into a place we don't know anything about. We have the privilege of it being public, and we can explore it. Like it can be exploratory. How many hunters are there? How many elk are there? How easy is the access? Is this a place? Is this a spot, or is this just a place? Like, is this a spot we would go back to, or just a place where there might be an elk? Like that is fun to me. Like
Yeah.
I spent my entire life thinking about moving west to like the first time I saw lonesome dove or the first time I saw an elk go down. It's the first time I thought about, man, one day I could be like a resident elk hunter. Maybe that might be cool. And I finally got there and I was like feeling that like, oh dude, I'm here for this reason, to explore this place, to see if there is a spot close to my house, if there is if I can have that experience. And I pretty quickly found that I could.
But it's not a gimme. Like my buddy's dad has, he's your classic working man. Been working for Montana Rail Link for his whole life. Very kind of limited schedule, weekend warrior, and the guy's never shot an elk.
Yeah.
30 plus years, way longer than that, 40 some plus years hunting in Montana.
There's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah.
My buddy Omar I was hunting with was telling me he had a friend whose dad had hunted for 40 years and never killed an elk.
Yeah.
I think I've hunted Montana as a resident, or on the the school the active student license thing. I think I've done 8 seasons in Montana now, and the first 4 I hardly saw elk, and certainly didn't kill any.
That's where I'm like,
And then the second 4 I've killed one every year.
but that like gathering of intellectual property is an important, I think, at least for
Yes.
me, is like an important period of time, however long that lasts.
Oh, absolutely.
You could be really good at it and find 3 or 4 hot spots in the first year and be like, I got my A, B, C, and D.
Mhm.
Or it could take you 5 years to find those areas, depending on how good you are at that. So, like when you're telling a story, when you're telling an elk story nowadays, that's a huge part.
And it's
of
also
what-
about acquiring knowledge, because like I had no fucking clue what I was doing. Like I had hunted a lot growing up, but I hadn't really. It was coastal Western Washington mostly. got to go on a elk hunt with my cousin in Colorado, but I just really didn't know. I had to figure it out and had to make a lot of mistakes and learn the hard way, mostly by myself, and just trying to accrue the knowledge of behavior and habits.
All right, we'll take us. One thing before we get back to your story. When you were with a buddy and you're walking in the woods, how do you decide who goes first?
Like walking first, or who gets first shot?
It was
Who's
easy.
walking first? Who's leading?
I think it's useful to have kind of discussions about who's the trigger man that day, and I've had it go a lot of different ways with friends, from Rochambeau to you had a stock yesterday, so I'm on today, or I called for you yesterday, so you called today. There's a variety of different ways to approach it. A lot of times it's kind of who, if you're with a buddy who hasn't got an elk yet, and I'm usually trying to help them. This weekend, I had every intention and desire of getting Jake an elk, because this is his spot, and he was kind enough to show me and take me there. And even like running in on the herd, he had an arrow knocked and I was filming him. And just the way it shook out, he went one way up the coulee. I doubled back because I thought there was more coming behind, and I was the one who got lucky. And so it's important. What I'm saying is it's important to discuss prior to the hunt.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you do, Cal?
I really like to call, so whoever is with me is by default shooting.
And when you're hiking in, you're leading them, or are you following? You're normally showing, so you're probably leading.
I'm typically, I can be a fast walker too. So,
yeah.
And I mean, I like talking to animals, so I'm always
damn good at it.
And,
I'm the same way.
And yeah.
No, I think that it's funny to me because we talk so much about how much it, like we all hunt with buddy. Like you got a buddy with you, you got a friend, and you got a hunting partner. Like how that all works out, especially when you're new. I was hunting with my neighbor. We just met like 3 months ago. We've become super close, but we've just never been in the woods together. And so he's former military man. He can ruck, like he can go. Like, so how do you put that all together?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're with somebody you've never been out there with. Like, what's that like?
It puts a relationship under a lot of strain. I've had people go from being really good buddies to go hunting that we're not really that good buddies anymore.
And it's also like, who makes the decision? He's like, dude,
Yeah.
I think we should go if we just drop down in. I'm like, well, I think if we stay
that
up
brings
here.
up an important point, and I absolutely love hunting alone. I do it a lot, and I used to do it a lot more back when I didn't really have as many hunting buddies and was trying to figure it out by myself and didn't want to be a burden on anyone. But you learn more by yourself, I think. And I really like not having to have the discussions of, well, what do you want to do? Do you think we should go up there, or you think we should stay here? Well, what? I don't know. Like, and it goes back and forth in this circle jerk forever. But when you're hunting by yourself, you just follow your instincts.
Make your decision.
You just
do
go.
It.
You just do
Don't
it.
have anybody second
Do what you
guessing
feel
your
like
decisions.
doing. If you want to go chase that bull that's crossing the top of the mountain with a half hour of light left, you go do it, or you don't if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that's true.
It complicates it having another person there for sure.
Yeah, and if it's a friend of yours, there's like a lot of, you got to be conciliatory, depending on what the friendship's like. You got to be able to like work through some shit together.
It's not like a guide scenario like this is what we're doing. It has to be a democracy on some level.
And so that's a big part of a lot of these stories. Is
That goes back to what I was saying about deciding who's the shooter, because once you do that, then that person can kind of be the hunt master and make some of the calls. So I think that's useful in that regard.
If it's your tag, then decision should definitely be yours at some level. Unless you've already seeded it, like, hey Cal, you're guiding me. You know more than I do. You tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I got that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue, Sam, with your tale. You're half drunk on White Claw. No, you're sober.
Takes a lot of White Claw.
Yeah,
to
dude,
get
it takes about.
this old.
I mean, Phil,
drunk.
how many White Claws till you're feeling it?
Oh, just one half.
Just a half.
Just a half. No, I'd say it's about
Jesus.
It's about three or four.
He does a shot of White Claw and he's
So he's
feeling
in
squirrely.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, are you a big White Claw guy?
Dude, I love White Claws. Drink of the summer.
Drink of the summer. Favorite flavor?
I like black cherry. So when
Black
Sam
cherry.
said that, I was like,
Can we
There
all
you
agree
go.
that
That's a lucky drink.
natural lime is dog shit?
Mm.
That's a hard disagree from me.
Yeah,
Black cherry is my
I'd
least
say it's
favorite.
a soft disagree from me.
Really? You like the
I don't
natural?
think it's bad.
First off, like what unnatural lime is what it tastes like? Bull.
Nice. So
Yeah.
well, we were talking about LaCroix flavors last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you like pamplemousse.
Well,
Phil.
exactly. Lime and grapefruit,
Okay.
I think, are the best LaCroix, and I also think they're the best White Claws. Checking out now. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, see ya, Phil. Stay behind the board with your pamplemousse. You drinking a pamplemousse right now? You ain't got nothing over there?
Nope.
No, okay. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah. So anyway, we wind, we got in there. We hiked several miles back into where the spot was, and where we thought we'd be able to intercept those elk. And the wind was different. We heard elk bugling down in the creek bottom already when we didn't anticipate them to be there until first light. So we're thinking, well, hell, if we get in there close, one, they could wind us. Two, they could pass us before shooting light starts because they were on an accelerated schedule, likely because there was people coming in from a different angle behind them, which we found out to be the case. So we went way back almost as far as we could on the public, got on high ground to be able to sort out the situation instead of being stuck down low, not knowing where they were coming, where they'd be. And we tried to stay very far, like just on the kind of the start of it, so that our wind wasn't blowing down these coulees towards them. And like we set up in like for the last, hour of darkness, first, beginnings of first light, and not at all an ambush situation. We were just trying to see where they were. We set up 2 different places and then looked at maps, started to be able to see the landscape, and then moved because it's like, oh, well, we aren't going to be able to move off this spot without them seeing us. It's a good place to view from, but we can't like move laterally without getting picked.
It's still dark while you're making these decisions.
Yeah, but like increasingly becoming light.
Gotcha.
But then we found a spot that we liked where we had a little bit of cover to get down into a coulee from this high spot, and then just saw them flooding.
Describe a coulee for those who aren't.
A coulee or a gully or a wash,
Yeah.
or it's just like a micro valley, a fold of the landscape.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so we got up on these rocks with some brush covering us, and there's another little fold that we could get behind and sneak down in. But then all of a sudden there's 200 elk coming up the hillside,
Dude.
towards us.
How many
And,
bulls do you feel like are in this 200 elk run?
like how many male elk? Probably a dozen or so. How many mature bulls? 2. There was a large herd bull right smack dab in the middle of the cows. And then just like a couple spikes and really spindly raghorns. And then, but like the one I got was not with really that herd. It was kind of trailing it. But we knew that there was a big bachelor group that we saw like 22 bulls when the last time we scouted it, and we could see them on the horizon at one point during this hunt, but nowhere near public land.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden there's all these elk, and we were somewhat pinned down. They came up a different route than they've come before. But we waited until like kind of the big flush of them was through, and we just weren't seeing horns except for the big herd bull, but he's got like 70 cows around him. He was screaming his head off. It was really fun.
Was he just rounding them up, or he just talking?
No,
to talk?
they were all pretty nervous, like that, because there was people behind them and they were moving. There was what I have to assume was a lead cow who was bugling, which is very interesting. You hear people talk about cow bugles, but I'd never like really been able to identify it. But I had binos on a cow who was doing long drawn out bugles, and we heard it in the morning. We're like, man, that is the shittiest little spike, or just practicing
Voice cracking.
Yeah, it's like, I felt like
learning how to
Simba.
bugle.
It was like Simba in the Lion King, like trying to learn how to roar. But then we saw that it was a cow who was kind of in between the larger groups and trying to keep everybody organized and get their shit together. But most of them got by us. We're kind of came around so that our like sneaky little exit off of our glass and tit was totally exposed. So we couldn't move. We were just like, trying to hunker down, monitor the situation. But then they kind of got behind full of the landscape, and we're mostly looking uphill. And I was like, okay, there's more coming. Those ones are up there. And we just dropped down into the coulee as fast as we can. Just felt like we had an opening, and it's like, oh shit, here's our opening. Go. We left our packs. We left, like, I had my sitting pad, so I didn't sit on cactus, and I left that there, and we both just grabbed our bows and ran.
That's another, probably not in your situation, but when to leave your pack. That's another really big decision.
But we wanted to be light and fast. We knew we had just this one chance at them before they crossed into private land, and so we just had to take off when we had the opportunity to do so. We got into that coulee and cut up towards the herd. They started to kind of mill around once honestly, it was like right after they got out of right near the private land boundary. But they kind of were out in the open, and I think we're like, okay, we left those guys behind, like, let's regroup. And they started to mill around and settle down a little bit. But we came up behind them. We were coming up this coulee. Like I said, I had Jake in front of me. He had an arrow knocked, and I was filming him, but I was walking backwards for a lot of it because I knew that there was more elk behind us, and I was keeping an eye out. And at one point, I happened to be looking backwards as he's creeping forward, trying to get to a rise where some of those elk were hanging out, and I saw ears coming up behind us, and I was like, "Jake, down, stop!" And we both just froze, kind of half crouched, and we had a cow and a calf walk by us at 15 yards or less. First Light Fusion camo. Nice little plug there.
And you were never thinking just shoot a cow?
No.
Wow.
Jake had
a trophy hunter.
Jake has a cow tag for that unit, and so we thought about it, but
have a
opening
hard
day,
time with broadside elk.
I do too. I do too.
My story. People might be mad at me in my story.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of time. I mean, we can kill cows until February nowadays in Montana. So I usually try to target bulls at least for opening morning. But the way they came up, I was like, maybe more will be following their path. And Jake really wanted to try to sneak up to the end of this little coulee because he could get like right up into that big old herd. He's like, let's like keep going. I'm like, okay, you keep going, man. I'm just gonna like double back because of the way those cows came over the hill. I'm like, I'm gonna get to that rock and see if I can just post up. And like as soon as I got to it, I saw horns come and I knocked an arrow, got up just a little bit more and drew, and then this bull just kept coming and I stood up, and then he was behind some grass and walked and walked and walked, and then came out into my sight window, and I knew he was going to see me just the way I was standing, and I didn't really have anything behind me because I was just standing on the edge of the coulee and so kind of silhouetted against the grass. But he was kind of slightly quartering to me, not a great shot, but it was like 22 yards, and I let loose just because I knew he was going to have me pinned any second. I didn't really even think about it. I've been talking to everybody about how my elk season lasted for 25 minutes, but it never even crossed I see a branch antlered bull elk. I just have a very hard time not shooting it after so many years of struggling so hard and having weeks upon weeks of not even seeing elk in the learning process that I just can't really help myself. I just kind of get a really strong drive. And so put an arrow through him, landed a little farther back than I would have liked, being quartering to.
Because you're trying to push back from the shoulder a little bit?
Trying to push back from the shoulder because I shoulder bladed a really big bull one time and watched him run away like a picador spear in a bullfight. It penetrated an inch and stopped dead. So I'm always very fearful of that.
That's a delicate shot. More on a deer than an elk. But when you got a quartering too, and you're trying to avoid that shoulder blade and put that arrow in that pocket, that's a delicate, like from shoulder blade to liver.
Yeah,
I mean, like it may seem like a big area, but that's a delicate placement of an arrow.
Yeah, and so the arrow landed between the last two ribs, penetrated chest cavity, nicked one of the lungs, went through the liver, but it also kind of ricocheted. It kind of clipped off of one of the ribs, and so it exited on the other side, just in front of the ham.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of the way it wasn't the angle. It definitely got a rib and changed direction. So it did go through the guts, but it also, broke the diaphragm. And he ran a little ways and stopped, and I rushed another shot at him. I guessed it was 40, and it was probably more like 55. In retrospect, went under him. Then he ran a little farther, and then Jake took a shot at him and missed. But then he ran off and over the hill. But I knew it was a decent shot. I knew it was a lethal shot. So we kind of regrouped, and Jake's like, I'm going to go down there. I saw another bull coming, and he ran off, and I was kind of sitting there. Then weirdly, a decent pronghorn antelope basically ran up to me to shake hands or something. And Jake had a archery pronghorn tag, and I didn't. And I was like, oh, I should call him. Oh no, I can't do that. And so I started to kind of be like, hey, buck, and tried to push it towards him, but that didn't work. But Jake ended up getting about 50 yards away from a raghorn that was broken off on one side, which is a long shot. A very long shot, and he didn't take it, which I think was a good ethical decision, especially having one elk potentially on the ground already. But I waited a while and then just kind of slowly wandered the path I saw that bull take until I could see down into the next little dip. I saw him bedded in some grass over there. I gave him probably about half an hour before I wanted to kind of go see if I could see where he went, and I could just see his horns, and I was kind of behind some stuff, and so I backed out, went and found the arrow that went through him anyway. The other one I might still be flying, I don't even know. And then I just kind of hung out for a while. Jake came back from kind of running around to see if there were any more stragglers, and I brought my jet boil with me, and so we had a pot of coffee, and I also had some Swiss Miss hot cocoa, so made it into a hobo mocha, and then Jake had a little flask of Pendleton whiskey, and so dumped that in there, so invented a whole new drink.
What do you call that?
We call it the
Nerve settler.
The Bromo Hobo Mocha.
Yeah, I like that. The
nerve settler was what it was, though, because I really wanted to go and try to take another shot at that bull.
It's so hard.
But where we sat down, we could kind of stand up and get on our tippy toes and see his horns. And we were probably 300 yards away, but he was bedded there, head up, feeling sick. And we had a pot of coffee with whiskey and hot cocoa, and then went and checked on him again. And I was like, oh, that rock pile, I can go way over there and then come in, keeping the rock pile between me and the elk. And I'll be able to get to 50 yards from that rock pile. And then I did it, got to the rock pile, and I was ranging, and it was 84 yards. And he was kind of looking right at me. And I would have had to expose myself to step out and take a shot. And I can hit things at 80 yards, but that arrow's in the air for a very long time. And I'm not a distance archer. I do that only for practice occasionally. I don't have a rolling sight, so I'm gauging when I shoot at 80 yards. I'm gauging off of the level at the bottom of my sight, and kind of picking that between that and my 60 pin. And I'm and he's right on the public boundary, and so I'm weighing my options, and I decided that it was a huge gamble to try to take another shot. Because if he got running, he could be miles into private land before he stopped again. And I've had too many, bad experiences. I lost a bull a few years ago that I think I probably pushed in the dark, and had an amazing recovery another year of a bull that was shot through the lungs, but still managed to run about a mile. And so I decided to sneak back out of there again and went back, and we had another pot of coffee and hung out and shot the shit and tossed rocks at other rocks and just killed time and kept monitoring him. And then one time I looked up and he was kind of wobbling and then tipped over.
Oh.
And so I felt very badly that he had to suffer, but he wasn't rolling around and screaming or anything. It was just kind of sitting there, like, going septic in his guts for better part of 2 hours. So I felt bad about it, but at the same time, I felt like it was the smart thing not to push him, not to engage that adrenaline, and just have him feel like he's just, because I don't think he really even saw us.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest thing is we spooked one elk out of those over 200. And it was that little raghorn that Jake was chasing after. So we got right up into the middle of them and didn't really disturb the whole thing. And I don't think he really knew what happened or what hit him, and just sort of went and slowly faded out. And then we were able to walk up and recover him and start butchering.
Man, there's nothing like being in a herd of elk like that.
Nothing.
200 elk running around.
Oh, especially when they were just super mouthy and a little nervous about people being in there. And it was a cacophony.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it strikes me like in those situations what elk really are. Like they're pretty amazing.
Very gregarious animals.
Yeah, pretty amazing animals. We were talking about previous podcasts, like some hunts you go for the country, sheep hunting, a Dall sheep hunt. Interacting with sheep, you don't get to do it a lot. You're not calling to the sheep. You find them, you stalk it, and you kill them most times. You do. There are times you'll watch them for a long time, but they're not as gregarious critters. But when you're elk hunting, you're hunting for the experience with the animal.
Yeah. And I think, something I said to Jake was like, because I had kind of tentatively planned a caribou hunt this year that didn't end up panning out. And I felt like I got my caribou hunt.
Yeah.
The way this all went down, broad, wide open country, could have been tundra, mountain slopes, lots of animals moving in big bands across the landscape, having one walk like right up on top of me. I shot it uphill. He was probably 10 or 15 feet above me when I made that shot. The arrow exited, higher than it entered.
Wow.
And so it very much felt like a North Slope caribou experience, more so than the elk hunting I typically get involved with.
That's why I wanted to like start these at the beginning and like compare, because a lot of times you're being camp with buddies you're hunting with, but when you haven't planned to hunt with someone, you need to like compare your situation to theirs, especially multiple stories. You can see how many different angles there are to take at this, and like the different things that happen, and learn from those. Like, but it really starts with at the very beginning with why are you going out there, how much time do you have, what's your desired result. What are you willing, what are the structures you built? What are you willing to take and not take?
Make sure those expectations match up with your buddies too.
Yeah, man. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. So, but Joe, your story will be yet to come. You didn't find your bull. You didn't have any. Did you draw your bow?
I didn't draw my bow, but I knocked an arrow several times. We were up really high and the weather systems were moving through pretty heavy.
Yeah, they were.
So pretty much every time we had an opportunity on an elk, like a really kind of surefire, like this is going to happen, the fog would roll in, and there were 2 times where I didn't get a shot at a bull because I couldn't get a solid range on them, and I was not comfortable estimating range in the fog.
Wow.
So,
but
going, twice
you
within
going
50
back?
yards.
Twice within 50? And you guys hunted all day for 2 days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we came back a little early yesterday because storm rolled in and it was ripping winds up on top of the mountain and gnarly rain coming. So
you're gonna go back?
Yeah.
Because this isn't just like a day hunt run. You got to like commit to this one.
Yeah, you got to commit to it. It's pointless to go up there for a day. You hike it and then have to hike back out.
All right.
So,
Cal, you went to a wedding this weekend. You didn't hunt.
Correct.
But what's your you got a game plan?
I mean, I still have elk tag in Idaho and here in Montana, so I'd love to run back to Idaho and hunt. And then I also have a buddy who drew a really good tag in a unit here that I've never hunted. And I'd be quite happy just running around with him and checking things out for his potential, real big bull tag. And the problem, like I always get a phone call like in November where it's like, if you have any elk meat, we'd love to get some.
All been there.
And so,
Oh, yeah.
like, I could just stop right now, but I already have folks asking for meat too. So it'd be good to get one more elk, and then or like try to pick up a handful of deer. Fill some whitetail doe tags or something like that. Yeah,
I'm gonna need to get a new freezer. I'm going to kill anything else. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get this bull in there.
Dude, I just went and bought a new freezer. I was like, what's the biggest chest freezer you have? Like, bring it to me. And I'll pay I don't even care. I don't want ever to run into a problem. Like, the chest freezer I got, you could fit probably 2 full elk in it. So
I just
got
didn't
extra
eat
room.
enough meat this summer, I guess.
I know. Well, you got Shanksgiving coming up, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have everybody come over and just eat elk shanks like the freaking, the fair. Like they're going to the medieval times.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's going to be a very caveman affair.
Listen, we'll close out. I'm going to tell you my story and I want you guys to tell me if I made the right or wrong decision. Because I'm in a similar situation where I had a freezer fail and I lost almost all of my game meat, which was it was a couple hundred
Heartbreaking.
pounds. It was if I could have had a funeral when I got rid of the meat, I would have. I mean, it's just like once you've lived with a full freezer for a long time, or at least enough where you have what you need, being in a position where you have a little bit left it's a first world, but very rough problem. So I got my first ever resident elk tag. I want to kind of learn the country and get the experience, but at the same damn time, there's very little meat left in the freezer. And so I've got to make the decision of like, what do I do? Well, the first morning.
You could come help me butcher tonight and
That's true,
probably
like-
find your way into some elk meat.
That's fine. That's all fine. Cal gave me some meat over the winter, which we're still eating on. And then like other people gave me some meat. Joe, you gave me some bison. So like from what I had to what other people gave me, I was fine, but it's just fucking feel the same. It feels cheap. I was like, I'm a cheap.
Well,
cheap man.
it's maybe not so much that it's cheap, just that that pride and just immense satisfaction of eating an animal that you killed.
Well, and I'll also be honest. Like my wife does a lot of the cooking. I do a good bit of the meat. And like I've just gotten used to the way that I butcher, like the way that I label stuff, the way that it's presented. Like you get used to get it out of the package. You know what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, and what situation it's going to be in. So there's that too. But so I went out with a buddy, close to home. We go out and we park at a trailhead. We've got probably a mile walk in, and we've got one little drainage that goes right into some ag where we'd seen some elk a couple of days before. The idea is that they're going to come back up into there. We don't know nothing. We don't know really anything about the drainage at all. We don't know if it's prime elk habitat, if it's something that they're going to move into. So the idea is to pop in there, see what it looks like, call a little bit, see what the activity is like. If there's nothing, we back out, we drive up to the next one and kind of try to, frog leap our way down the ridge and try to check all these drainages that are running down into this really good looking ag, and that's private. We jump into there. It's about 7:30 in the morning. Day has broken. It's fully light out. We hit the call for the first time. Complete silence. Hit a bugle again. Complete silence. And looking around, we've got some timbered out cuts. We got a burn over top of a big ridge that's probably about half a mile from where we are that I'm glassing with a spotter. And my buddy goes, holy shit, a bull, a bull, a bull. We look over and there's a bull just screaming through this timbered piece, coming down this ridge into the bottom, and he's coming for us. Like he didn't make a sound, he didn't bugle, we didn't hear him crash. Luckily he ran. I mean, he came busting through an open patch where we could see him, drop down into this timber bottom. Now we got to guess. We're like, he's coming to us. We got to get down this ridge we've never been down before, pick a spot, get ready, get him to us. Don't know really how big the bull is, just know it's a bull. We drop down probably 500-600 yards on this, finger ridge, get set up. I'm like, well, I got 20-30 yards in front of me. I'm kind of blocked off to my right, but I know if he pops up here, he's going to be 30 yards. And if he gets here, I'll see him. We sit down, hit the call one time. We no more than hit the call one time. And I look over and there's the back back antler tips of this bull coming up at like, he was 40 yards if I could see him. He's on this shadow on this ridge. He comes, so I get drawn. I'm like, I'm going to shoot this. I don't give a shit what this is. I'm shooting this bull. I get drawn. I kind of turn to my right. This bull's coming up on the ridge. He's coming up, still making no noise. He kind of does a couple glunks, gives us a little.
You got to be close to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, he's 35 yards at this point. Gives us, the first time I've heard any elk vocalization, he gives us like a couple of glunks and just kind of bowls up, and he's behind a tree, and I'm waiting. I can just see the top of his back at this point. I'm like, man, 7, 8, 10 steps. It's money. I'm drawn. It's just like, I'm waiting. I'm probably drawn for 5 minutes, and I can just see this one
I
elk.
saw that video. You were shaking pretty hard.
By the time that video started, I had been drawn for what felt like a long, long time. I'm waiting on him to come. I'm waiting on him to step. And then I look to my left, just out of the corner of my eye, and here comes a spike. Just just cruising right towards us. So the bull is still behind some down trees where I could see that he's looking back at the spike, and he doesn't know we're there. He finally steps out. Well, he steps out instead of stepping out broadside. He steps out facing the spike. So now I've got a 30-yard shot of him, just basically his brisket quartering to me. I'm like, that's not going down. He's going to have to cross where the spike crosses. I'll just wait. So I'm at this point where that video starts its own social. I'm like, I've been there a long time, and I'm waiting for this thing to move. He steps down at about 30 and starts turning broadside. Just about at that time, the spike at this point, he's 3 yards from us. So he sees us, smells us, whatever, who knows, 3 yards. It could have been any one of those things. Busts down the mountain. But he only goes 30, 40 yards. The 5-point turns around and goes back behind where he is. My buddy Omar hits the call. They turn around, come back trying to get our wind. And I just kind of mirrored him on the mountain. And the shot that I could have taken on this bull, he comes back up the hill now on the other side of me. He came back at 25 yards. I was kneeled down behind a stump. My buddy was calling and sees him coming. He's like, just stand up and shoot him. He's 25 yards. So I drew and I stood up. Well, if I'd have been like 6 inches taller, I could have seen vitals. I had like his back straps and maybe the top of his vitals. And in my mind, in the moment, I'm like, if I let this arrow go, it's going to have to crest this ridge and to drop into the pocket. And I'm just not sure of that happening. And I don't want to hit him in the no zone. I want to like hit him in that, because that's basically what I had to aim at. And so I just let it down and spooked them when I let down. And they went back down the mountain. We called them in again to about 80 yards, and they stood broadside for a while. And then they had enough of that, and they were off. And after the fact, I'm like, man, that's about as good of an opportunity as you're going to get that quickly. And I could have sent 1 or 2 arrows and been fairly confident. I mean, I feel like they were marginal, but I still could have been fairly confident that they were shots that might have killed an elk. So at the end of the day, I'm like, it's a marginal shot. It's not a huge bull, and it's opening day. And so you weigh all that stuff in your head. And when I look back, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't just fling an arrow at this thing, not 100% confident that I was going to kill it.
Well, you just said it, right?
Yeah.
An arrow that might have killed an elk.
Yeah, you don't shoot those.
No,
you don't fling
shoot those.
So at the end of the day, like all those things went through my mind. I'm like, oh man, I need meat. Like this would be my first Montana resident archery bull. Like these are pretty rare opportunities to call a bull in virgin country that quickly. All those things together don't add up to a marginal shot. They just don't. And I just think it's just the type of hunter that you want to be, maybe. I don't know. But it's something that I've thought about for a couple of days, thinking, man, that could have been a nice, just much like your story. You go out, boom, 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 done. See ya. And you got all the meat you need, and you can go help buddies. You can go hunt deer. You can do whatever else you want. So
Go fishing.
Yeah. Whatever else.
I'm going to do a lot of fishing this fall, but I'm also really excited to call for buddies because I've worked really hard on my out calling skills the last couple of years. And last year I bugled a bull into myself hunting alone, and that was transcendent.
Wow.
But it'd be fun to go out there and practice.
I'll be left to wonder every unsuccessful day from here till the end of the season.
Oh yeah.
Whether that arrow should have went or should have stayed.
Could have just slipped it through there.
There's so many horror stories of that, though. Like, all those start, like, man, I lost this bull, and it was a shot that I didn't know if it would have killed it. So when you have those thoughts, you may have killed an elk.
And it's just,
You made the right choice.
The torturous part is you're so close. You're like 6 inches away.
Oh, yeah.
You take 3 more steps. And that happened a couple times in that scenario. So it's all those things that go through your mind, all the things that led up to that. All it's like, how lucky are we to step into a drainage and hit the call a couple times, and here comes a bull that we've never seen, didn't know was there. We guessed that he was there. We were like, if an elk's going to be somewhere, we think he's going to be here. We had no idea. And so all that stuff comes together and it doesn't happen. Man, what? There's a lot of what ifs, but like you said, Cal, at the end of the day, don't send it.
Oh, man. No way.
Mm-mm.
No, you turn a good season into a bad season real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you have a whole, rather than what if.
I mean,
you're
nobody
like,
goes, great season, wounded a bull.
Yeah.
So I was close.
Chase him for 6 days.
Yeah.
I watched him go lay on private, stare
Yeah.
at me forever.
No, nobody has a fond memory of that.
No.
Well, we got many more days
Only
left.
nightmares.
We got a long time. Got a lot of time to hunt.
I'm into it, man. I like most stories that you tell. Well, like we come into the office on Monday after the opening of the season. Everybody's tell a story. I like to hear like the truncated version and then the real version.
Miles was trying so hard to work when we're all talking over him and around him about
dude.
He didn't get to go hunting this weekend and was just like trying to focus really hard. Felt bad.
How dare you try to work on the Monday after opening day in the meat eater offices?
Yeah, give me a break.
No.
And then the editorial meeting was all
Just-
hunting stories for the first.
Steve told his. You
Yeah.
guys, I'm sure, will hear on the future Meat Eater podcast the story of Matt's bull and this weekend. But man, it's fun to have almost all of us were out hunting. Cal, of course, was celebrating nuptials, which is very appropriate.
Not mine.
Not yours.
Other folks.
No, we're still. You're never gonna.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear, you're never gonna get married. Phil, what do you? You're always the voice of reason. What do you take away from all this?
It sounds like an experience that I would love to be a part of someday.
Oh,
Does that sound sad or pitiful?
No. Pickups was $46 for a general elk deer.
If that,
I think it's 46. Whatever. If it's cheaper than that, it's only $46.
It's always like 120 for me early in the year to get just all of it.
Dude, the
So I have
sportsman's
no
package,
idea what it is individually.
Everything.
Yeah, it's like 120 with all your
For
archery permits
fishing,
and upland permits and fishing. And,
Bear, waterfowl,
Well.
lion, wolf.
All right. Well, hopefully you learned something from this. I enjoy just like comparing stories and how we got there, how we made it happen, how we didn't make it happen, what we're going to do, why we did it. I think that stuff is super exciting, and just telling hunting stories is bad ass. So thank you, boys, and good luck to everybody out there this week, this weekend, the rest of the month, whenever you're out elk hunting. Good luck, enjoy, and we'll see you soon.
I guess I grew up on
That's it. That's all. Episode 78 in the books. Talking elk. Thanks for listening to our stories, our decisions, our good and our bad, success and failure as a part of hunting. So I'm glad that you were here to listen, and I'm glad to be colleagues with these gentlemen that sat in. So thank you to Ryan, thank you to Sam, and thank you to Joe for sitting in and sharing a little bit with us. Of course, next week we'll get back to the old format with interviews and new guests and different topics, I'm sure. But for now, it's nice to stew and hang in elk season, because that's what it is. That's where our minds are, to Meat Eater Office. And speaking of elk season, Remy Warren's new podcast, Cutting the Distance, that I work on with Remy, we have been working hard to get you some elk episodes. Episode 4 of his podcast, which was 2 weeks ago, is all about how to dog an elk. Last week was how to coax in silent bulls, and another elk episode coming up this Thursday. So if you haven't subscribed to Cutting the Distance, if you aren't listening to Remy's podcast, you're not going to get this invaluable elk information. And you got to go over there and you got to listen to Remy. He is a savant. He's a master. Everyone here agrees that he's one of the better hunters we've ever run into, and he's been an elk guide for the better part of his life. So he's got endless knowledge. And he imparts it on Cutting the Distance. So go over there and subscribe to Cutting the Distance. And after you do that, go to Meat Eater's YouTube channel and subscribe there too. We got some great new content coming from the whitetail world that I've also been working on with our boy Mark Kenyon. So stick around there. If you want to get it, you got to subscribe to the YouTube channel. One last thing to subscribe to is our brand new Whitetail Weekly newsletter. Go over to themeateater.com. and you click on subscribe, and you're going to subscribe to the Whitetail Weekly newsletter. That's every Monday afternoon in your inbox, new whitetail content. You're going to love it, and you're going to thank me. I promise. So until next week, enjoy hunting season. We're deep in it, and thanks for joining us. See ya.
Thank you, Jack Daniels. Oh, number 7. Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven. And angels start to look good to me. They're gonna have to deport me to the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in heaven.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.